Authorities said that at least 36 people had died and 2,300 were left homeless as a result of flooding brought on by a cyclone in southern Brazil that washed away homes, trapped drivers in their cars, and flooded streets in many cities. The deadliest cyclone to hit Rio Grande do Sul state has pounded more than 79 municipalities since Monday night, according to Governor Eduardo Leite. According to the state's civil defense, the storm, which meteorologists classified as an extratropical cyclone, also produced a tornado with gusts surpassing 62 miles per hour in Santa Catarina. The flyover we just performed shows the dimension of an absolutely out-of-the-ordinary event, Leite stated in a video shared on the state's social media sites. Communities beside rivers weren't the only ones affected. Entire cities were also severely impacted. Some residents were seen on top of their homes asking for aid as rivers exceeded their banks in videos taken by rescue workers on Tuesday and broadcast by the online news site G1. After huge roadways turned into fast streams, several places were completely blocked off. Leite announced on Wednesday that 36 people had died, and state emergency officials reported that at least 2,300 people had been left without a place to live. Another 3,000 people had to momentarily leave their homes. Rescuers discovered 15 bodies in a single house in Mucum, a city of around 50,000 people. Residents uncovered a path of devastation along the river after the storm, with the majority of the buildings carried away to the ground. Images of a sheep hanging from an electrical wire demonstrated how high the water had risen. As he stood on top of a pile of trash, Mucum resident Marcos Antonio Gomez stated, "The water arrived very quickly. It was rising 2 meters, 6.5 feet, per hour. We are out of options. Nothing at all." The Mucum City Hall warned residents on Tuesday to look for supplies to cover their requirements for the ensuing 72 hours as a sign of how long people would be stuck. Other municipalities asked their boat-owning residents to assist with rescue operations. Gomez, a 55-year-old businessman, claimed that his home had experienced flooding 4 times in the previous 15 years. He claimed that this particular flooding was the worst thus far and predicted worse flooding in the future. "We cannot possibly live here. This will happen again." Gomez stated, "We must leave this location." Luana Dallas was one of the many Brazilians who packed up their belongings and fled the rising seas. Dallas, a resident of the village of Passo Fundo, told the news agency Reuters, "We saw that the water was going to flood our house since dawn, and we were putting things on top of the table and the wood stove. But it didn't help." A 74-year-old sawmill worker named Domingues Fontana, who managed to flee the Mucum flooding, claimed nothing could be saved. He stated that, "When the water was coming, I ran to the highway. You must go away." Staying there results in death. According to the online news source G1, many of the victims perished from electrical shock or were trapped in cars. During a rescue attempt, one woman perished after being swept away. The Taquari Valley, which is around 150 kilometers, 30 miles, northwest of the state capital Porto Alegre, and is where the majority of the fatalities and property damage were reported, has been the focus of search and rescue efforts. On Wednesday morning, however, those initiatives were extended further west, and helicopters were dispatched to the Rio Pardo Valley. While likely sparing the worst affected areas, further intense rains were predicted to fall in the center-south of the state. On Wednesday, authorities kept the Jacuí, Cai, and Taquari rivers under 3 flood warnings. A second cyclone struck Rio Grande do Sul in June, leaving 40 communities in ruins and killing 16 people, many of them in the Porto Alegre area. Is Brazil still at risk of flooding? Authorities warn that additional flooding is possible as heavy rain is predicted to begin on Thursday. It is the most recent in a spate of tragic weather incidents that have affected Brazil, which scientists think are probably being exacerbated by climate change. According to officials, unchecked urbanization and haphazard housing constructed on hillside are also making such calamities deadlier. Of the 203 million people living in Brazil, an estimated 9.5 million reside in locations with a high risk of flooding or landslides. Another cyclone in Rio Grande do Sul in June caused thousands of people to be displaced from their homes and left 13 people dead. In February, 65 people perished in landslides brought on by unprecedented rainfall in the São Paulo state resort town of São Sebastião. According to a renowned expert, Climate change and unrestrained construction in flood and landslide-prone areas are increasing the frequency of disasters. In an interview with AFP, Francis Lacerda, a researcher at Brazil's IPA Climate Change Laboratory, discussed the causes of disasters like the one that struck the São Paulo state coast last weekend, as well as what might be done to stop them. What is the reason for all of these disasters in Brazil? It is a result of global warming, which has led to an increase in extreme weather occurrences not just in Brazil, but also throughout South America and the entire world. Even while these catastrophic episodes have grown over the past 30 or 40 years, there has actually been a drop in Brazil's overall rainfall in the southeast, central west, north, and northeast. The vast quantity of heat in greenhouse gases is being absorbed by our oceans, which is affecting ocean currents, and this is changing how heat is distributed at Earth's poles and equator, which in turn is producing changes in how the atmosphere responds with these extreme weather events. The amount of precipitation has reduced overall, but it has increased in intensity across the board, often raining in only a few hours. Is the entire nation at risk? Yes, although mountainous regions are more risky. For instance, near the coast of São Paulo, the phenomena was exacerbated by the mountain range and the approach of a cold front with strong coastal winds. But locations along the coast without mountains can also experience that kind of rain. Could fatalities have been prevented? It was a catastrophe that was foreseen. A day before the storm, meteorological models began showing a high likelihood of a similar phenomena. It would have been feasible to provide emergency officials with ample notice to order the evacuation of these places and save lives. City, state, and federal governments aren't ready for climate change. Plans for adaptation and mitigation are required. Millions of people are in risk. What does Brazil do about it? They have no choice but to move into these high-risk locations because of real estate speculation, which has essentially forced poor people living on the outskirts of cities. Get those folks out of there is not enough. We must radically reassess our cities in order to restructure urban public policies. Among the many things that may be done is to address the shortage of good housing. Likewise, since taking government again this year, Lula has committed to end all deforestation in the Amazon by 2030. The trees of the Amazon basin absorb carbon and are regarded as being essential to stopping global warming. Under his extreme right predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro, the rate of deforestation had risen dramatically. Deforestation decreased 66% in August over the same month last year, according to government data released this week. After a comparable drop in deforestation in July, that came after it. In light of the fact that populations often rise in the hot, dry months, this is encouraging. In addition, 2 new indigenous reserves were declared by Brazil's Environment Ministry. Environmentalists and indigenous leaders claim that the action provides crucial legal protection for indigenous peoples who oppose encroaching agricultural and illegal mining on their territories, both of which are major contributors to deforestation. According to Mahatma Gandhi, the environment gives enough to fulfill each man's needs, however few out of every odd man's ravenousness. Please subscribe to Weather Collapse if you want to know more, and be updated on the latest news about natural calamities or disasters happening all over the world, and don't forget to like today's video. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.